our next speaker. It's Santosh.
Thank
Give
you.
him a round of applause, you guys.
I'm a little bit scared because this is my first time at NGB, and I have heard a lot about NGB, the best conference for the Angular. I was like, okay, I have to be here. And somehow I got selected because probably my talk was good. I hope so. But yeah, so I'm going to talk about Angular router, and I have named it as Undiscovered part. And somehow I'm getting called. Okay, wrong time. So I'll be walking you through some of the advanced router stuff which is happening. How many of you are aware of the standalone APIs? The Angular stuff? Oh, cool. Then my talk does make sense because it uses standalone APIs, and I can see a lot of you have not used it or not heard about it. So, and as I said, it's an undiscovered part, so it's always good to have a guide, right? So join me as on a guided tour of Angular routers, and I am your guide for the day. And let me tell you something about me first. So you should know your guide really well because you have to trust on me, right? So I'm a senior software engineer. I work at a company called Celonis, and I stay in Germany. I'm a GD for Angular, and I'm also a GitHub star and Auth0 ambassador. I run a community called This Is Learning. So this is the community which I'm a co-founder, and my another co-founder is Lars. You might have, if you ever read about Ivy, he was a very active contributor when the whole transition was going on in Ivy, and he is also very active in NX. So he keeps writing about different ways how you can optimize your monorepos and some advanced stuff which you can do with NX. We also do a podcast, which is called This is Tech Talks. So in case any one of you are interested to join and want to share something with the community, feel free to just DM me, and we can host you. So this is how you can reach out to me. My Twitter handle is Santosh Yadav Dev, and same on LinkedIn and GitHub. So yeah, I keep doing some stuff on GitHub as well. So just in case you want to see. Cool. So I'm not going to actually do a live code, but yeah, I'm going to walk you through the demo. So something may break, and now you know my details, so don't come for a refund. So let's go ahead and get started. And if you're wondering what are the preparation I have done for this talk, so I have an Angular hoodie, I have an Angular bottle, I have a shoes which matches with Angular logo. If something doesn't work, I have to buy pants. So let's go. Hope this is visible at the end. Should I zoom in? Okay, that's perfect. So let's see how you can configure the router with standalone APIs, right? I'm sure if you have used Angular before, you know about for root for child, right? So with Angular standalone APIs, now you can actually just remove that code, and you can configure your router like this. So you have providers, and then you have provide router function which is available, and you can pass the routes to this function, and that's it. This is how you configure your standalone, or you can say standalone APIs, or you can use standalone APIs with Angular. And if you see, I have also the code which I have migrated. So I kept it just to show you that, just in case you want to try it out, right? I mean, it's easy migration. You don't have to do anything. You just need to delete your ng modules. Delete it. I mean, it's commented right now, but you can, of course, go ahead and delete it. Just use the routes which you have already defined and use it in your standalone API. That's it. This is the way you can actually go ahead and migrate. But this is not something which I wanted to show you, but how to use the APIs which existed before, and now how you can port them into standalone APIs. So let's start with some of the stuff. First is, of course, with debug tracing. So with debug tracing is something which will enable, it used to be called enable tracing before, when we had for root and for child. So if I uncomment this and save my code, and let's see, I'm missing a comma. Let's see the app. Okay. And let me zoom in this part. So this all events, router events, which happens in your browser, you will be able to see all the events which is happening once you enable the tracing. So if I click on any route, let's say if I move to employee, you can see all the events are being fired, and you can see which events are fired in the sequence. So it is really helpful in case, let's say, you are working on a very large application and somehow the router stops working, right? I mean, you try to navigate, but it doesn't work. And now you have to figure out where it is breaking. So you can actually go through this log and see at which event, after which event, the navigation canceled is being called. So you can probably, it may be a guard issue, right? So your guard is actually throwing you outside or onto another route. So you can actually figure this from this logging or the trace. This is another with enabled blocking initial navigation. This is used for SSR, so this is not an SSR application. But in case you are using SSR in future, you can just pass this parameter because SPA and SSR works in a different way because in case you are using SSR, you have to wait for some time until unless your application is loaded, right? Your server, you make a call, your server responds. So during that time, your initial render will be blocked. So that's just to let Angular know, okay, you have to wait till everything completes. So it's not important here right now because it's SPA. We have hash location. It's been, I think, for root and for child. For root, we used to pass it as use hash true, right? So now you can just pass a function called with hash location. And if you're wondering why these are the functions, because if you saw the initial talk, right, initial talk from Simona, she mentioned that how making this standalone APIs makes router trace-checkable. So this is trace-checkable. So it's, let's say, if you don't want to use hash location, the code responsible for hashing or making your URL hashed or the HTML5, whatever you want to call it, so that code will not be shipped into your final bundle, which happens with the for root and for child which you use. So that's the reason that's all these are functions. So let's go. I'll show you this one. This is really interesting. So this configuration is called on same URL navigation reload. So where this can be useful, let's see. So let's disable this, click on home. So you can see, okay, all this router events are called. Nothing here, but let's say if I disable this, and so I can see all the router events. I mean, it says, okay, activation starts, activation ends, then navigation ends. But what in case I click on it again? You can see what happened. It says navigation skipped. So all the events are not called because this is the default behavior of Angular. In case, let's say, previous state and next state matches, it will just skip the navigation. But let's talk about a scenario, right? So because if you want to use this, you should be aware in which scenario I should use this. Let's say your user is ideal, right? And then he comes back and he tries to interact with the application. What will happen? In case you have token, it will be expired, right? And in this case, what happens is it's just a blank page which will appear. What you can do is you can make it reload. In this case, what will happen is, let's see. Click on home, of course, first event. So all the router events are called. Click on home again, and all the router events are called again. So this is where you can actually call your existing router guard, see if your token has expired, renew this token, or let's say if you want to say, okay, your session has ended, you can just kick him out of the system and not show the blank page. So this is really important to understand that it says reload, but actually your page is not reloaded. So don't think that your page will be reloaded. It's only that all the router events will be recalled again, right? So you can call your guards as well. So they will be re-executed. So all the router guards as well as all the router events will be re-executed in case you make it reload. Okay? So this is on same URL navigation. I'll keep this. Now let's talk about preloading. So how many of you have used preloading? I'm sure many of you, because most of the time we use just lazy loading, right? I mean, preloading is something which we don't define, but this can be a really useful strategy in case, let's say, you want to preload your modules. So there is a default strategy. So you preload everything in advance. So all the lazy loaded modules will be preloaded for you. So this is how you can configure. You can say with preloading, and then you can say, OK, preload all modules, and all your lazy loaded modules will be preloaded. But what in case I don't want to do it for all? I want to decide. I want to have some logic. It can be anything. For example, you can use your network, right, to see how, or the network of your end user. So if they're on 3G, 4G, 5G, for example, if they're on 3G, I don't want to preload. But if they are on a really fast internet, I think preloading makes sense because, of course, then your user will have seamless experience because everything is preloaded. They don't have to wait for anything or new modules to be downloaded. But how you can actually override this functionality and pre-configure. So this is where you can actually use. Let's comment this out, and let's see the service. So there is a service which I have written, preloading strategy service. So if you see the service, what we are doing here is we are just saying, OK, if this router has a property called preload, then add it into preload, and then preload this module. Otherwise, skip it. So I can configure for each route. I can configure for each route whether this route should be preloaded or not. As I said, you can actually put in any business logic as per your need. But here I'm saying, OK, I can configure it manually. So if you see, I already have the service. So I'll just uncomment this. So I can do or preload my module. And let's see here. For user, I'm saying preload this module because this is lazy loaded, right? So I'm calling load component to lazy load or lazy load this component. Let's go ahead and see it in action. So how you can verify if it is preloaded? Of course, you can go to network tab, right? And you can see this user component. It's preloaded for me. So as a user, I don't have to wait because this is already preloaded, and I can just now go to this component, and it's already preloaded for me, and it's available. So this is how you can actually play with this particular service or override the behavior which is offered by preloading strategy. So it's very, I would say, not that complex. You just have to implement preloading strategy, and then you can get access to your route. And of course, there is a load event which we have to call. It's like, have you used middlewares? Anyone? Middlewares. Mostly, I'm sure if you work with .NET or Java, you might have used middlewares, right? So where you have to call next, otherwise it will not pass to the next available event. So the same way, so if you call load, it will go ahead and load this particular lazy loaded module. If you call null, it means I don't have to do anything here. So just move away. OK, so now we are done with preloading. Let's see a feature which was already available for a long time. How many of you know about the title? So you can now pass title on each and every route. But you can also override. You can override the behavior in case you want to do it dynamically. So what you can do is you have a service which is called, you have a class called title strategy. You can actually extend this class, and you can have a method called update title. And build title is to build how the title will look like. But the important method here is update title. And you can do whatever you want. I mean, here I'm just saying, OK, this is the custom title. I'm just passing some title from my route configuration. And I'm saying, OK, this is a custom title. But you can also make an API call, like download it from your backend based on whatever route configuration you have. So it really makes it interesting because you can do it based on your client, right? So you can also do this. And the way to configure is you can just go to your module, and you can say provide title strategy, which is the default strategy. And then you can say the class which you have written. So here I have written a class called title service. And that's it. That's how I have overwritten the default behavior of title. So Let's go ahead and configure it for one of the routes. So I can say login home. Yeah. So I can pass title. This is home. And let's go ahead and see. And you can see here, I'm sure if it is visible or not. So, but if you see this title, it says custom title pipe home, right? Because I have now introduced my own custom title strategy. So yeah, let's go on to a little bit advanced stuff. So these are all the APIs which are very useful. You can go ahead and use them. Now next, so here also, there are a few things which you can do with Angular, starting Angular 14. So, sorry, starting Angular 15. Now you can also do lazy loading for your component. So we saw some talks about standalone APIs, right? In the morning, Simona introduced us to the standalone APIs, which is now the default which Angular team is asking everyone to do, move away from modules. So in that same story, we have load component. So now you can lazy load component. So you don't have to introduce module. You can just like create a component which is standalone. So if you go to user component, you can see this is a standalone component. So I don't have to say load children. I can just say load components. That's cool, right? I mean, you don't need modules anymore. But there is one more thing. How many of you don't like writing this? Right? So yeah, let's get rid of it. So I can remove this. I can go back to my component. I have to just make sure that I should use default. And that's it. Now you can just delete .then from your entire code base. So just make sure that this works with both. It works with component as well as modules. So if you don't want to move to a standalone component, if you're still using modules, yeah, you can still do it. Just make sure you make your class as default for whatever, if you're using standalone components or if you're using modules, and it works. So yeah, you can really remove some code. But it comes, there is one more change which is required in case you do this. Do you know what? How many of you have done React? How you import default? You actually don't use curly brackets, right? So you don't have to use curly brackets here. Otherwise, this will, of course, throw me some error. Let's see. And let's delete and let's see. OK. And I have to save this code. And it works because I have not imported user component directly. But let me show you that as well, because if I want to, if you move to this code, I mean, this kind of code, you may face this issue because your existing import may break. So let's try to do this. Import from user component. And nothing. So the only thing which you have to do is now, as it is default, you can say user component. And yeah, that's it. So you don't have to use curly brackets. Just remove the curly bracket, and it works the same way. And as this is lazy loaded, I will remove it as of now. Cool. So this is the another API which of course you can utilize. I mean, you can simplify your code base. You don't have to use then anymore. And let's see what else. So there is one example here as well. So for example, for employee, I have done the same thing. And what in case you have for child? You might be wondering, right? Of course, you informed us about for root, but what happened to for child? You don't have to worry about it. You can still go ahead and use your standalone API. So if you see the way I have configured it for employee here is, it's same. I mean, I have routes, right? So if you see my routing module again, I have just kept this code so you can migrate your existing code and refer to this. I have just commented this out and then just exported the existing route which I had, put it into provide routers, and that's it. It works. So it's like I just want to also show you that moving from router for root and for child, it's very simple. So this is the first optimization you can introduce in your existing application. Let's say if you're already on Angular 15, you don't have to do a lot of things, right? Saves a lot of time. Cool. So my application still works. Cool. Now, let's see a few more things. I still have 20 minutes. Oh, OK. This clock is wrong. 20 minutes. And let me show you the route guards. So with all these changes coming in, of course, Angular team has also introduced something called functional guards. So let's go ahead and see functional guards. So here, if you see, I have written a match. So this is can match guard, but this is not a class, right? So I'm sure every one of you know how to write guards. It's a class, right? So you write a class, and then you implement can activate, can deactivate. Now you don't have to. So you can just use functional guards to make sure that, OK, you don't have to introduce classes anymore. Because once the problem with classes, of course, are decorators, then it introduces a lot more code. But with functional guards, of course, your code is very small, and you can reuse it anywhere you want. For example, here, can match function, you can see I'm just using. I'm not using so far, but let's introduce. So I'm applying it for employee. And let's also apply for user. And let's save it. And now guard is in action. So it is actually kicking me out and sending me on the login page. But do you saw something different? What happened to can load? What happened to can activate? So this can match guard is a guard to rule all of them. So you can actually just move everything, remove all the guards which you had, just use can match guard, and that's it. You don't have to worry about, OK, this is can activate, this is can load. The can match guard can do everything for you, which can activate and can load can do. So less mental model, less things to learn about, right? So, and this is also where I have introduced the inject function. This is something which is available from long time, but Angular community realized it's very powerful. So if you see, I don't have anything in constructor, right? So I'm just using inject function. I'm injecting login service. I'm taking the router instance, and I'm checking if the user is logged in. If it is not, just send him to the login page. So let's go ahead and log in, right? And I have very secure user ID and password. It's called admin. So, and it works. So my guard works, right? So I can just go to employee, user. You have 10 minutes. OK, I have 7 minutes. OK, so I have 2 more things to show you, because this is really advanced. That's why I have kept it for the last. So one of them is really interesting, because I invested a lot of time, some nights, to figure out how things work, how does this thing work. And to do that, I'll show you this home very nice component, which is home component, where there is some advanced information about a user, right? So if you see this, and let me show you the console. OK. And I will disable the tracing, because, of course, I don't want to see a lot of information here now. So here you can see it says ng on init and new instance of home component, right? So this is something which is available. Let's go ahead and do one thing. Let's go to employee, which will ask me to log in. So I have to disable the guards, because otherwise I'll end up a lot of time just logging in. So I'll just comment this out. And let's comment this out. And we're done. So let's go back to our application. And let's click on home. So it says, OK, the new instance of home component is created. Then there is ng on init, lifecycle look. And then I have just added a tab operator to see my RxJS call, right, which makes an API call and loads the data. What in case I move to employee and come back to home component? What happened? The home component instance got recreated. Do you remember Maria spoke about there is a strategy by using which you can cache your component? Yeah, so this is what I'm going to show you now. So here, if you see my home component, there is not much information. I can cache this, right? why should I recreate this component every time? So, but the question is, can we do that? Yes, you can do that with Angular router reuse strategy. So let's go ahead and see how does this work. So I already have the implementation available here because I have stopped trusting my live coding skills. OK, cool. So if you see this route reuse strategy, I'll show you the code, but let's see the behavior, because that's important, right? I mean, code you can just copy from my GitHub repo, but let's see the behavior. So again, new instance of home component created. Then you have ng on init, lifecycle loop, as it always happens. Let's go to employee. Let's come back. Everything works. But where is my new instance? Where is my API call? So everything is cached right now. So you can actually do this. Let's say if you have any component where you don't need to retrieve the latest information, latest data. You can just, let's say, you have about us page, you have some contact us page, where you don't need to do all this, right? And they are available by your route. I mean, they're accessible by route. So what you can do is just cache them. Let's see how. So of course, this is where you can implement base route reuse strategy. So there are a few functions. OK, I still have 30 minutes left. So let's say. So the first function, and very important one, is should reuse route. So but I was just kidding. So you can see the first function is should reuse route. And I'm saying if it contains, my data contains reuse, I'm using box syntax because I was lazy to use the question mark syntax. But yeah, so I'm passing a property called reuse. So if it says reuse, it will actually save this information. It will say, OK, this route can be reused. But the important thing is here. So if you see the store, I'm actually saving the state information into a map. So I'm saving, OK, this is the route, so route path, and whatever the information that was available, so I'm saving the entire tree information into my map. And there is one also method called should detach. So it says, OK, once should I detach this particular instance so I can reuse it? So this is where I'm saying, OK, if this contains reuse in my data property, then do that. And should attach, when should I attach this information? If in case it is available in my store. So I'm just checking in my map. If it is available, just go ahead and give me the same instance which was available. So this is the simplest information or simplest code. You can see each function contains like one line of code, and you can achieve this. And if you see where I have configured this, so let's go to routing module, and you can see I'm passing this reuse property here. So I can actually just pass this property to my another component, and it will behave in the same way. The one important thing which you have to understand is just don't put any logic into your ng on init. Otherwise, it won't be called, and you will get into some issues. So if you're using the reactive code, you're good to go. Just go ahead and move your existing code or existing component and make it cacheable, right? Yeah, so I have like 13 minutes available so far. No, last minute. So I'll show you the last example, which is very simple, but very interesting use case. Because I've seen not many developers using this. So let's say you have a route called verify/email. What do you do? So you will configure a route saying verify/:email, right? But do you think it's correct? Because I can pass 1, 2, 3, I can pass some jumbled character, I can pass anything. And what you will end up doing is you will verify into your database saying, oh, this email does not exist. But what in case you can stop it before? You can configure your route based on matcher. So here, if you see this, I am actually doing, not this one, I have written a new one. So yeah. So here you can see I have written a matcher. There is no path property. Path property is optional, basically. You don't have to specify path every time. You can actually have a dynamic route as well. So using path matcher, what I'm saying is, if my URL length is 2, and my first property or first parameter is called verify, and the second property matches this regex, this is a number because this is the easiest regex I know, and I could copy from the internet. So that's why I'm just matching numbers. I don't want you to write email. But you can do that. And let's verify this, right? So I can go to this, verify, and let's pass this jumbled character. And it just throws me an error saying this route does not exist. And you can also introduce 404, saying, OK, probably this route is incorrect. But what in case you have correct route, and Manfred is looking at me, so I'll just finish this up. And it works. Everything is fine. So it works, yeah. So you actually can save this like API call, all those things. I mean, yeah, there are other ways to do it as well. But you can like before your route is called, you can verify. But this is the simplest, not the simplest, but this is the best way to do this. So here, if you see, if it is successful, this component gets loaded. If it's not successful, we return null. Means just go ahead and call the next available route, or just try to match with the next available route, whichever is available. So next was, there is nothing. So it said, OK, this route does not exist. So this is it. And of course, I had slides. So I'll show you some slides. No, this is not a movie. So I'll just skip this. But because I wanted to show you the harnesses, but which I won't be able to do. So I will show you some code, which is on slide, and which I have like taken a very nice screenshots. So there is a router harness API, which is available with Angular Router 15.2. You saw a talk from Alisa, right, about harnesses, how beautiful they are. So you can actually use the same. So this is how you can actually configure your harnesses. So you can just provide your existing routes. Then you have to provide location mocks. So you don't have to mock other services, for example, router, activated route, all those things you don't have to mock manually. This is also available since Angular 15, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, you can pass providers, provide location mocks, and this is how you can test your route events. 5 lines of code, and it doesn't show you an error saying your event happened outside NC zone. How many of you remember that? If you try to use Angular router, write some test case, it always throws an error that it is running outside NC zone. With harnesses, no, it's not. And you can match so many things. I'll share you the repository. You can just download the code from there. And this is the code repository, just in case you want to scan. And I'll wait for a few seconds. Otherwise, I'll share it on the Twitter, so you can download. And I also have an Angular course. This is 17 hours Angular course, free, available for everyone. It has more than 500K views so far in last 5 months. So in case you want your new developers to learn Angular, probably you can redirect them here. And happy Easter. So Easter is coming, right? So everyone is excited, and because there is a holiday. So happy Easter. And thank you. Thank you so much.